everyone, and welcome back to the Fearless and Fabulous podcast. I am your host and creator, Melanie Robinson. I am also the current reigning Ms. Voluptuous Gulf Coast, and this is a space where we are empowering women to thrive no matter their age or their size. And today I've got another pageant queen with me. This is a sister from another system, I should say, which is
Yes.
very appropriate since I know she'll be talking about that. But I want to introduce to you Melissa Paduk. Hi, Melissa.
Hi, Melanie. It's so great to be here this afternoon.
Oh, thank you so much. So I want to let our audience know that we have an interesting connection. We both have the same pageant coach, and that's a cool connection itself. Shout out to Maria, the pageant gal. But we both discovered we went to Western Michigan University and go Broncos. But
Yes.
it just goes to show what a small world pageantry really is and how much we can find in common with one another. So, Melissa, if you just want to let our audience know a bit about yourself, give us a little intro about what makes Melissa Melissa.
Yes, definitely. So, as Melanie said, I graduated from Western Michigan University last April with my master's degree in public history. History is such a big passion and interest of mine, and I would definitely love to talk more about that as we get into, tonight's interview. I have been competing in pageants. This is going into my ninth year, I believe. I did pageants for 7 years, took a 6 year break to go to college, and I came back last year out of retirement. That pageant bug just does not ever go away. And I knew that I had to come back. I'm competing in the National American Miss System for Michigan coming up in July. So I'm so excited about that and so grateful to be working with Maria and finding that connection with you through Maria. So that has been so amazing. I would say in my free time, I like to do strength training and walk my dog Dave through different nature preserves that we have. I live in Kalamazoo, so there's tons of different spaces to go
Yeah.
walk around. And obviously, like mentioning again, my love of history. So I always love doing historical research and kind of pursuing and working on expanding some of my personal research projects.
Well, first of all, you had my heart and you said history because I am a history nerd.
Yes.
I love biographies. I will watch. Do you watch any of those channels on YouTube like Weird History? Do you watch that one?
I love those. So they're so awesome
Yeah.
just to get like really weird history facts that like when you tell someone about it, they're like, how do you even know that?
So let me ask you, what got you so interested into history and why you decided to make that your career path?
Mhm. Yeah, so I always kind of grew up watching those history shows with my dad. Like, I mean, American Pickers, I wouldn't say is a history show, but it had that kind of like, artifacts and things like that. And I always kind of had an interest in it. And I was always so interested in Egyptian history. That was like my topic as a kid. Like, anytime we had a research paper that was open-ended, like you could look up anything, I was like, I'm doing Egypt because it was just so fascinating to me, but I never really knew what kind of path I could go down with that as a career.
Right.
And I still love animals, but I really loved animals when I was younger. And so I always dreamed about being a veterinarian. And around high school, I was like, I don't think I can do that. I'm not very good with blood and surgeries and all that stuff that goes into being a vet. And I was like, well, that's going to be a little bit of a problem if I try to become a vet if I'm not okay
Yeah.
with that kind of stuff. And I had a government teacher in, I believe, my sophomore year of high school who was talking about his sister who was an archivist. And I had never heard of that before. And he was telling a story about how on Trump's inauguration day, she was in the Oval Office cleaning up and organizing Obama's things that were going to be moved to the archives since they were now historical items. And I was like, that sounds like the coolest job in the world.
Yeah.
I love
Right?
history. I love organizing things. I've always been super organized. And I was like, this seems so perfect. And so I spoke with him, and he got me kind of on the path for public history. And so then at that point, I was like, okay, this is what I want to do. I at least want to see, where this goes. And so I went to an open house for different universities, and a rep from Western's history department was actually there. And it was the only person that I talked to that entire night that knew what public history was
Hmm.
out of all of the other universities. And so I took that as a very, very big sign that I
Yeah.
think Western is where I'm supposed to go for this. And so I got my bachelor's and my master's from Western in public history. And it has been such an amazing time in that program and having those opportunities. I currently, so obviously, I'm not in college anymore. I'm working full time as a data analyst. So, not like totally in the realm of history, but I still love to pursue the different projects that I started in college that I've been working on expanding. So, for example, which you'll probably find this super interesting since you went to Western,
Yeah.
um, I created and published a digital walking tour of Western's historic East Campus
Oh,
and tying
wow.
in the historic preservation side of it and the controversy and the greater history. And that was something I published as my honors thesis. And so that was 2022. So over the last 2 years, I've been working on expanding it in hopes of, I would say, hopefully the next year, fingers crossed, hopefully getting it actually integrated on Western's East Campus as a resource that people in the community can find and actually have access to just by walking around East Campus, because right now it's kind of limited to the people that know about it since it's primarily lives online.
That would be fantastic. It'd be a piece of legacy that you created that you could leave for your community and for the school. I think that'd be amazing.
That's definitely it's
Do you
on.
think was that something you would like to do, is like maybe curate things for a museum, like creating audio guides, things like that? Is that direction you want to go towards if it was possible?
If it was possible, definitely. I think this project really encapsulates public history because whenever I say that, they're like, "What's public history? I know what history is. What's public history?" And
Yeah.
it's pretty much exactly what this project is, doing historical research and creating something for the public to be able to use to contribute to that collective memory. And that was one of my biggest goals with my East Campus project was having something that connects old alumni who remember what it was like to go to school on East
Mhm.
Campus. It wasn't that long ago that classes were being held there. And with everything that went on with the destruction of the campus, a lot of those memories have been kind of pushed aside. And that's something that I've realized through speaking with alumni that I've shared my project with. And the way they just light up that I
Mm.
remember like these moments and these things that you're talking about, or man, I haven't seen a picture of that building in years. And it's like they finally have something that other people, that younger generation, are bringing this back up as like, I want to share about this. And so they're able to kind of get those stories. And I've had the privilege to talk to so many different alumni and get their experiences from living on East Campus or going to school on East Campus that I'm hoping to include as I continue to expand the tour, since it has about 20 different entries or stops on the tour. And one of my biggest goals is to really get alumni to tell the story of
Mm.
those specific buildings. Like, oh, I lived in Wallwood Hall, for example, and this is my story that I can kind of weave into the greater history. I think that would be a really great way to
That would be
connect all
really
of the
cool.
generations of Western alumni. And that's on my huge list of big goals that I have for that project. But right now, within the next year, working on just expanding it to get it to a point where I feel that it's full and expanded enough to be able to get it on East Campus in a physical way where I'm not, having to go back and revise things a lot or add things in. So it's definitely been a long research process, but honestly, that's one of my favorite parts. So I love being able to curl up in the library and do research all day.
Well, who knows? I have not been back to Kalamazoo in many, many years. So someday when I do, because I have some family in the area and I would love to get on campus, and who knows, maybe I'll be able to access your resource and be able
Yes.
to relive some memories because I was there during the 90s. So I'm sure it's changed a bit
Oh,
since
yes,
then.
it has. I swear every year it feels like they're tearing new buildings down and putting new ones up. So definitely let me know if you're ever planning a visit to Kalamazoo. I'd love to show you around and give you some of the, other details that I didn't get included in the tour, because that's another one of my favorite things to do with my tours, go out with groups that are planning on going out, as like making it a whole event, and me being able to kind of tell them a little bit more of like, oh, since I've been researching more, here's what I found out about this that like didn't make it in the tour, or I found this out after I published
Yeah.
it. So they get those kind of cool little tidbits that not a lot of people know.
Well, let me ask you this. Why do you think it's important for people to study history? Why should we, like, if I'm going to say it in a very plain way, it's like, well, why do we have to know stuff that happened years ago? It has nothing to do with me now. For example, why do you think we should still study it?
I think it's so important to study history and to really understand the progress that we have made since those times, and really understanding where we've come from. So, with the example of Western and its expansion over time, knowing what Western started as, it started as a normal school for teachers, and it was for training teachers, and it really heavily contributed to the greater, a practice of training teachers across the country, and especially in this region of Michigan.
Mhm.
And knowing that, and you kind of understand a little bit better, and I would say even appreciate more knowing the history. And so for me, I am very like sentimental. And so I loved being able to go to East Campus and really understanding what happened where I'm standing. And that's something that I tried to emulate in the tour, to give people that experience of, this isn't just a big open field, like this is what happened here. People's lives were here. People lived here, went to school here, grew up here. And so I think definitely having historic preservation and preserving these different historical landmarks or just areas is really important for people to understand more about what happened in
Yeah.
certain areas, or really all over, and contributing to that and thinking about it in a future sense. I think historic preservation is a very hot button issue, especially
Mhm.
with a lot of the controversies going around. But I think learning from what happened in the past is so, so important in going towards the future. If you simply take something away and erase it, there's nothing you can learn from that anymore, because nobody remembers what
Yeah.
happened, what the impact was, how we all needed to move forward in a more productive or fair or just route. It's gone. And so that's something that, with the controversy of the destruction of East Campus, is something that a lot of students and alumni that I talked to didn't really even know any of that stuff that happened with the destruction of East Campus. And so me bringing all of this stuff up, they're like, I didn't even know there were buildings there. I didn't even
Mm.
know what this was. And they've been going to school at Western for over almost 4 years, 5 years, and they had no idea, because it's been pushed under the rug and nobody talks about it.
Well, I forget who it is. There's a quote. It says, "It's impossible to know where you're going if you don't know where you've been." And I think that is
Exactly.
probably the main reason why I really advocate for people to study history. One of the classes that I have taught online is intercultural communications. And there's a
Mhm,
section we talk about with hidden histories, where certain parts that happened aren't really discussed or really taught, or there's just not a lot of a spotlight put on those things because they're more sensitive and painful. But I think
mhm.
that's part of how, we can grow as a society by looking at these events that took place. What can we learn from those things? And how can we be better from something that
Mhm.
was difficult at that time?
Exactly. I
Yeah.
totally agree with that. I think that's a great sentiment, and really encapsulates it. I mean, it really is impossible to have a path forward if you don't even know what happened, in the
Hmm.
past or in your past. It's so important to, learn from those mistakes and those opportunities and those experiences, and bring that with you into the future, not forget about it and push it off to the side and say, oh, that didn't happen that way.
Or to minimize it.
Hmm.
to say, oh, that was a long time ago. Well,
Hmm.
if it's still having an effect on how people interact, today, then we haven't fully dealt with it
Yeah,
then. Yeah.
exactly.
So let's switch gears a little bit. So you
Yeah.
mentioned that you done pageants for 9 years. We took a break to go to school.
Hmm.
How do you feel different now going into Royal International Miss? That's the pageant you're going towards, right?
National American Miss.
Okay, National Miss. Sorry about
Yeah.
that.
It's okay.
So what's the difference between when you did pageants before and when you're doing pageants now? How has Melissa grown?
It's
What's any fears you may have had to deal with to in order to come back?
in so many ways I have changed. I expressed in our Queen Collective call last night with Maria that I think back on my pageant journey, and I think that honestly, like the first 7 years of competing was like the trial period where I just didn't really know what I was doing. I thought I did. I thought that I was doing everything right. And then, I went to school and I took all of those skills that I learned from National American Miss, the public speaking, the interview skills, the confidence skills, and I was able to implement them in my academic career at Western and was able to grow so much as a person. So, a story I always like to share is like when I first started competing in pageants, I couldn't even say my personal introduction in front of my parents in the backyard. It was like I literally stood up there and I ran right off the deck and was like, I can't do this.
Oh
And
no.
it was, yeah, no, that pretty much sums up my shyness confidence level at that time. But through National American Miss, learning all of those skills, I definitely don't think I'd be anywhere close to where I am without National American Miss. And that was one of the biggest reasons that I wanted to come back. I was in college, I was doing all of these things, and for the first time, I wasn't really doing things in like, okay, I'm going to be competing in a pageant this summer. Let me bolster up my resume so that I can, have more experiences to talk about. It was, what do I want to do? What am
Mhm.
I passionate about? What opportunities do I want to seek out? And I was able to really figure out my interests. And that's when I really narrowed down my interest with historic preservation and public history. And I had just more of a solid understanding and knowledge of myself and what I wanted to do. But I always had that little, pageant bug in my ear being like, you could always go back, you could always go back. And so as soon as I graduated, I was like, I have been thinking about this for over a year, like really considering it. I'm going to do it. 10-year-old Melissa has grown so much since she first started competing and it had always been a dream of mine to be Miss Michigan for National American Miss. And I was like, I can't just let this go. I have to try at least one more time. And that's when I competed last year. And just through that experience, it was night and day from the way that I felt going into rehearsals and competitions. And my mindset was just so much better
Yeah.
that when I placed first runner up, I was like, we're coming back. We're doing this again because like I said, really do feel like the first 7 years I was I was working my way to being the woman that I am today, but I was truly embracing the woman that I am today last at my last competition last July and this past year since then leading up to my upcoming pageant in July has been just I don't think I've ever experienced this much growth in this short period of time. It has been insane. And so I'm so excited to be competing in July. I'm so excited to be here and being able to share all about my platform and my passions, because that's another something that I went to my pageant last July and I really felt the need that ended up leading to me forming my platform, My Fellow Queen. And that has just been something that has been so fulfilling, launching my interview series. And I cannot believe that little 10-year-old Melissa she would just be like, I don't even know who you are. Like, what is going on? I couldn't even say my introduction in front of my parents, and now I'm hosting biweekly interview series and I was representing the College of Arts and Sciences at Western on a community level. And it was just, what is happening? But it's been such a crazy experience, but I wouldn't change anything all those 7 years was worth it to get to this point.
Well, everything happens that leads you to something else.
Exactly.
Even the setbacks that we have, we learn from those, hopefully, and keep moving forward. So you mentioned your platform, My Fellow Queen. What made you decide to start it, and how do you think it's impacting other women?
Yeah. So at last year's competition, like I was saying, I had the opportunity to work with and kind of answer some questions for some of the younger contestants that it was their first year competing. And this one interaction really stood out where we were at a open rehearsal, just anyone could go there and practice on the stage. And I could tell this one girl was a little bit nervous. She was a younger contestant. And I got up there being my little confident self, and I was like, I'm going to do my casual wear routine just to practice. And I got done, and she was like, how did you do that? Like, I don't know what I'm doing. My routine is all over the place. Can you help me? And I was like, of course. Like, I'm never going to say no if I could just tell that she really needed
Hmm.
someone to just kind of talk to that wasn't really affiliated with the pageant, because she had expressed that she just didn't feel super prepared from the information that was provided, especially with like routines and things like that. And so I was like, I will totally help you. Yes, show me what you got. We'll work on it. And I could just tell from that like quick, 15-minute interaction helping her that she felt so much more comfortable. And I actually got to touch base with her throughout the weekend, and she would ask questions. And I could just tell that every single time I was able to help her, even just say, like, oh, I think this looks better, or like this shade of lipstick would like look great with your skin tone. Like small little things like that just I could just tell made her feel so much more confident and so much more
Mm.
prepared. And so coming back after pageant weekend, I really just thought about it. And I was like, I have been competing for that had been 8 years because we're going into my ninth in July. And I was like, I do have a lot of experience. And I've noticed from, last competition and all of the other years competing that there's always been this kind of disconnect that I personally felt especially between title holders and the contestants that are competing for
Yes.
that title. I've always noticed this. It was something that as a little girl competing, I always felt kind of pushed off to the side because I wasn't friends with the reigning title holder. And it always just made me have that, like, I wish she would talk to me. Like,
Mm.
I wish that, she would be more outgoing with all of the girls and not just the girls that she's known, from
Yeah.
year to year competing. And that's really what got me thinking I want to create a space for pageant women across systems to come together and share their knowledge. I was able to talk with a lot of the girls that I was personally competing against last year, that so many of them had been their first year. And they were like, I could just tell that they wanted somebody to talk to where it's like, please just share your
Yeah.
experiences. I have questions and a lot of them don't get answered in the paperwork. A lot of the paperwork is just, this is the general rules, but not, that more specific, more personal things that people are wondering about. And so that's how My Fellow Queen got started. I originally launched it it is still on Instagram. It's at My Fellow Queen. And I love posting motivational quotes in there and just kind of interacting with the community of pageant girls that I am building on there. And then I believe it was January or February, I officially launched my Sisters Across Systems interview series. Because again, like I mentioned, I really wanted this to be across pageant systems. And I think that's really hard sometimes
Yes.
when, especially since I am still a competitor with National American Miss with one primarily pageant system, a lot of the girls that I'm interacting with are from National American Miss. And I was like, I don't want this to be one system, limited to one system. And so that was one of the reasons I started my interview series to bring in girls representing all different types of systems. I've had Australia, Wisconsin, Michigan, all over the place, national title holders, and just bringing them all together. And that way, girls that are watching they might say, I really want to be a part of this system. Now I have a contact. I could have someone that I can reach out to that did this interview that talked about this system that I can ask my questions to. And I think that's really awesome to create that community and give them someone to actually speak with about
Yes.
competing in that system or any questions that they have instead of just, hey, apply to this system and here's a link that just goes to the application. And you get that more personal connection and that personal communication with an actual title holder or a contestant, because that's another aspect of my interview series is I'm looking to interview both queens and title holders for different systems.
I think that's wonderful because I can attest when I've been a contestant that I did feel that disconnect from the current title holders and the contestants, that somehow they
Mhm.
were up here and here we were.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't feel like that way. I don't
Mhm.
think any woman who is entering a pageant or even goodness sakes, a business. Like if you're going to a
Mhm.
network event, there shouldn't be this hierarchy type feel. It should feel like a collaboration and connection. And so I think that's such a unique thing you've put together, Melissa, is to help bring together different queens from different systems and reaching out to different women who are looking to get into pageantry, because I think that's going to hopefully cut down on some of the, I don't know, perception that we're all catty and we're all super competitive and we're all putting holes in each other's gowns, things like, things like that you hear, that it's supposed to be
Yeah.
what pageant girls do. But I think more often than not, we're much more accessible to each other than what most people might perceive about us. And I think what you're doing is going to be such a wonderful space for women. And I think it's going to go beyond probably just pageant. Hopefully it'll connect, startup business women as well, just to find others, who are in the same
Mhm.
boat.
That would be so amazing, and that's really why, like, it is my fellow queen, but again, with differentiating it in my interview series that, like, you don't have to wear a crown from a system
Mhm.
to be a queen. It's my fellow queen. We are all queens. We're all together creating that fellowship, that sisterhood that you don't have to, just be a title holder. You can be a contestant. You can have never competed in a pageant before, but you are a fellow queen.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh my goodness, Melissa, I can't believe how much the time has just flown while we've been
It has.
talking. But I want everyone to have a chance to know where to find you. Of course, I will include your links as well. But you mentioned earlier that they can find you at My Fellow Queen. Is that correct?
Yes, that is on Instagram at my fellow queen. And then my personal Instagram is at Melissa Paduk, Melissa Paduk.
Wonderful. Well, Melissa, this has been such a treat. Good luck to
Thank you.
the finals in July. I know you're going to kick butt. You're going to be amazing. I'll be rooting for you from one Bronco to another.
Yes, go Broncos.
Go Broncos. And that's all the time we have today for the Fearless and Fabulous podcast. Please like, comment, subscribe. Please share around and let me know about any other people who may be interested in coming into this space. Thanks again to Melissa, and we'll all see you soon. Bye
Bye. Thank
now.
you so much. Bye.